Ladies and gentlemen, because it's Rosh Chodesh, there's no Kel Mole, so let's all rise and just say a Perek Tehillim. Perek Kuf Lamed. If you have the art scroll, I believe it's on page 540. Shira malos mimamakim kirasicho Adonai. Adonai shimo v'koli, tieno osnecho kashuvos l'kol tachanunoi. Im avonos tishmoyo Adonai miyamod. Kimcho aslicho leman tivorei. Kivisi Adonai kiveson havshi v'lidvaro hocholti. Nafshi l'Adonai mishamim laboker, shomerim laboker.
Nafshi l'Adonai mishamim laboker, shomerim laboker.
Yachel Yisrael el Adonai, ki im Adonai achesed v'arbeimo fidu.
Yachel Yisrael im Adonai achesed v'arbeimo fidu.
V'hu yiftes Yisrael mikol avonoso.
V'hu yiftes Yisrael mikol avonoso.
Good Rosh Chodesh to you all. Thank you for attending the Ariel and Karen Avrech Yahrzeit lecture. The program will be as follows. I will make brief introductory remarks. Then we will hear from our featured speaker, Rabbi Abraham Cooper. As Rabbi Muskin just said, there will be no Kel Maleh because it's Rosh Chodesh. I will then recite the Kaddish to Rabbanan, and then you are all invited to brunch. Please mute your cell phones. There is, in popular culture, a terrible fascination with evil. Witness the hundreds, if not thousands, of true crime TV shows, movies, and podcasts that recount, sometimes in excruciating detail, horrific crimes. There are libraries of books dedicated to the study of serial killers, evil dictators, and cultures that enthusiastically indulge in genocide. But try and find studies of goodness, and you will come up almost empty-handed. The truth is, goodness is far more mysterious than evil. Both Ariel and Karen were good people, and their goodness is an exquisite mystery which should cause all of us to pause and reflect. The mysteries of Ariel's goodness are best encapsulated by this story. One day, a visitor to Ariel's hospital bedside wondered if Ariel ever asked, "Why me?" Ariel thought about this question for a very long moment, and here is his reply. I wrote it down in my diary, so it's almost a direct quote. Ariel said, First of all, I wish I wasn't sick. But since I am, here's what it means to me. These illnesses I've had to endure are also a bracha. Being sick has allowed me to spend more time with Mom and Dad, Lida and Aliza. We have all drawn closer together and forged a special relationship. The years of illness have been a means by which I have met and befriended many generous and extraordinary people. People I would probably not have met had I not been ill. The years of illness have taught me the value of time, how precious it is, how foolish to waste even a moment. Near the end, when I believe Ariel sensed that he was not going to make it, Ariel told me that he had had a wonderful life. Daddy, he said, I wouldn't change my life for anybody's. I am blessed. Only a person imbued with goodness could maintain such an attitude in the face of such terrifying circumstances. I first came upon the mysteries of Karen's goodness when I was 9 years old, and I saw Karen for the first time in the playground of Yeshiva Flatbush. It was the 4th grade, and Karen had just transferred from Yeshiva Ohel Moshe. She was standing off to the side, shyly looking at the ground. I could not articulate it. I did not understand the soft aura that seemed to surround Karen, but I sensed that Karen was special. She possessed a mystery that drew me to her with such power that not a day went by for the next few years when I did not think about Karen Singer, the rabbi's brilliant and beautiful daughter. The simple truth is, Karen was born a woman. All of our classmates in Yeshiva Flatbush sensed something otherworldly about Karen. She had an intensity of focus and maturity that was apparent to all. Even our teachers treated her with unusual deference. Karen was wise, but sometimes guileless in her innocence. She knew there was evil in the world, but never accused anyone of evil intent. She did not enjoy free-form casual conversation, but had the gift of listening and comprehending. She was secure in her opinions, but never engaged in verbal duels or one-upmanship. She was not part of a wide circle of friends, but she was close with a few special friends. She was beautiful, regal, but never vain. She had a sly sense of humor, but never at anyone's expense. The mosaic of Karen's goodness is complex, but if there is one overriding feature that describes Karen, it was her integrity. She did not alter her opinions in order to suit a particular groupthink. She was constant, deeply reflective, and she was repelled by pretense. Karen was pure, solid, and so deeply modest that few noticed her modesty. Ariel and Karen are physically absent, but their absence is, for me, a presence. May their memories be a blessing. It is my honor to present my friend since childhood, Rabbi Abraham Cooper.
Chodesh Tov, everyone. I reluctantly agreed to speak today because I feel so close to Robert and his beloved Karen Alaa Shalom, and I'm not certain, or I wasn't certain, but if just listening to his words now, that I or anyone else, except for Robert, can do justice to the love of his life. But as I grew up with both of these remarkable people, I could not say no. My topic today is leadership, or more accurately, mostly leaders who impacted on me and helped shape my worldview. I will speak about Karen briefly last, but first I have a few words about Ariel Zatzal, who was in his lifetime here already a malach, and whose amazing neshama, I am certain, continues to serve Hashem from his box seat in Olam HaEmet. Kishmo Kenhu, for as his name, so is he, is the statement from Chazal. Abigail used that term in the book of Shmuel about her husband Naval, which is a word that is related to nevela, dead piece of meat. The Medrash Tanchuma advises all of us, and I think almost everyone here has been through it, like, what name are we going to call our child? Especially those who are from the old country and didn't seek to know in advance the sex of the child, the newborn. And I'm sure collectively and individually, we're talking about hours and hours of reflection and wondering if we're using the right name. Because we all know, we learned from our parents and grandparents, there was never any pressure, that choosing the right name for a Jewish child would influence for good, we hope, or God forbid the other way, if it was incorrect. And we also know from the mystics, of which I am not one, is that the Hebrew name that is chosen is actually connected to the essence of that soul. So here's what I discovered about Ariel. Rashi explains in Yeshayahu that Ariel is another term for Mizbeach, an altar, based on the holy fire that went up from the altar that look like a crouching lion. The main function of Beit HaMikdash is the place to bring all sacrifices. In the Mishnah in Midot states that the first Beit HaMikdash was called Ariel, and that the fire that lit from the Mizbeach was like a lion, thinner at the base, looming larger as it went skyward. Ariel's name is 100% matched to his soul. His oxygen was Torah. He inspired anyone who met him with his intensity, his zest for Torah and mitzvot. And the tragedy for us is that this lion of fire was called to return to his maker at such a young age after suffering for so long. But accompanying him on that torturous journey were loving parents who were devoted to him each step on his unique spiritual path. So I've selected 6 stories, Weiselach, if you will, that speak to me anyway about the qualities of leadership. And I will try my best, I think, to do this in chronological order, because besides that, there really is no connection. So back in 1972, not 1872, 1972, I went to the Soviet Union with my good friend David Konigsberg, and we spent a month in 6 cities, starting on Shabbos Shuvah through Sukkot and beyond. We thought, to help the Soviet Jews. The truth is that that month did more to inform me and to educate me about what true heroism is, what Yiddishkeit is really all about. And I can spend probably hours, which nobody here has, speaking about the influences of so many people, famous and some forgotten. But what sticks out is the story of Reb Tzvi Pikakarsky. After spending a horrible Yom Kippur in Moscow, we eventually came the first days of Sukkot to Baku, Azerbaijan. I think mostly people now, because of the war in Iran, have an idea about Azerbaijan, a 96% Muslim country on the Caspian Sea. It's fascinating. It was the opposite of being in Moscow. First of all, the sun was out. Secondly, all people we met, even the KGB people, were a little bit more relaxed. And they had a kosher sukkah, which was amazing. And on top of that, word got out that 2 young American Jews were in shul. So hundreds of additional young people came to shul, because you don't see Americans every day. And we saw that there were 2 minyanim. One was Ashkenazi, and the other was, you could call it Sephardi, but it had people who traced their lineage in this space back to the time of Churban Bayit Rishon, the destruction of the first temple. It's on a major trade route. So we saw that there was a blind rabbi, had to be in his 90s. He was standing at the shtender in the shul, and we would tell you more about him in a moment, but he was clearly an amazing figure, because unlike any other synagogue we were in, even though he was blind, there were 2 KGB assigned to him. Amazing. Then I went to the other minyan, and I said, is that guy up front, who was the Shabbos, is he a chacham? And that's when I learned the term, yes, he's a chacham balayla. So, in other words, this ancient Jew who had somehow fled and survived Hitler and survived Stalin and Khrushchev, this old man, and when it came time to go out to the sukkah, again, they wouldn't budge from his side. Hundreds of people crowded around the sukkah, and they filled his glass this much with vodka. He was going to make kiddush for everyone. And he turned to his handlers and said to them, in Russian. Look, we have two guests who are here. One of them, which was me, was not so good in Yiddish. So do you mind? I want to give a special blessing to you because I understand there are hundreds of people here. And he looked at us, handshaking from age, and he said, Aleihem ne'emar, shaketz t'shaktzenu, v'ta'ev t'ta'avenu, al tidrosh l'shlomam u'l'tovasam, kol yemei chayecha olam hazeh, kol yemei chayecha olam haba. Very briefly, the two guys who are always with me are the scum of the earth. Do not trust them, and not if, God forbid, you even find them in the world to come. Later on, we made our way to his home. His only daughter was a senior Communist Party official. His only chavruta had died 2 years before. And he had unbelievable svarim, which he gave us some to bring back to the refuseniks in Moscow. And he knew Kol Torah Kula. I mean, he was a gon, atzum, stuck, trapped really in this place. No, not even his chavrusa was alive anymore. And we bemoaned the fact that here was a person who would have been a greatest Rosh Yeshiva or a professor of Talmud anywhere in the world, and here he was, a great teacher, bereft of students. How wrong were we? Because on the way out of the city, we discovered that actually he continued teaching. He was teaching Aleph Beis to college students, Jewish college students, who wanted to emigrate to Eretz Israel. So this great Talmudic sage spent the last years of his life teaching Aleph Beis to Jewish students. In the postscript, my first trip back about 9 years ago, and this has to do a lot with Jewish history. No one there had any recollection of this great rabbi. Why? First of all, a lot of people died. Secondly, because his students all made aliyah, and their children, and eventually great-grandchildren, maybe they heard about Reb Tzvi, or maybe it's a forgotten parsha, but I always remembered that when we talk about leadership, and we talk about one's fate in life, it takes a lot of interesting turns, but I learned a lot and still reflect on his great leadership. Second, the hunter, Simon Wiesenthal. Again, we can spend hours just talking about him. I want to tell you just one story. You know, he lost 89 members of his family. He weighed about 90 pounds when the American military liberated, quote unquote, Mauthausen concentration camp. He was too weak to stand. And yet, if you come to our museum, you'll see there's a typed document that he submitted to the American military government 3 weeks after his liberation with names. So this was what kept him alive. And I had the honor to know Mr. Wiesenthal, Lava Shalom, for about 29 years. So once I asked him, tell me about your first case. He said, well, you know, I was always pushing and nudging the commanding officer of the DP camp I was in because we wanted to go and get Eichmann and others. And one day in that the end of the summer, the commander calls me in and said, you know, Mr. Wiesenthal, you're always complaining we don't help you, etc. Listen to this. We just got a lead on a major SS officer. I'm giving you a Jeep and a driver, and you go arrest him. Now, he could barely walk. He said, I'm supposed to go and arrest the Nazis? Yes, I mean, you keep talking about Nazi criminals, right? Here's your chance. So he goes into the Jeep, and it's a private U.S. military. They drive about 40 minutes, and when they pull up to a certain apartment house, his heart sank because it had 4 stories. And of course, where did the guy live? On the top floor. So he turns to the kid, who has also armed, and said, okay, are we going upstairs? Oh, no, sir. My orders are very clear. I'm to drive you to this address, wait, and then take you back. So Mr. Wiesenthal said it took him about 20 minutes to huff and puff his way to the 4th floor. And then he goes over to the door. He wasn't armed or anything. Goes over to the door, knocks on the door. He says, a huge guy in the old cutout undershirt. And he said, Herr Schmidt, jawohl. I arrest you in the name of the Jewish people and the United States Army. Come with me. So he said, well, can I put my shirt on first? Yes, you can put on your shirt. And Mr. Wiesenthal said, my first case, an SS officer had to basically carry me down 4 flights of stairs. That is his true first case, but I think the insight, first of all, I mean, Simon was rigidly honest, but I think the insight there also is a message to each of us, which is, you know, when someone has that uniform or has that air of authority, and it looks like you're finished because you don't have a way to respond. You know what? When you can take that uniform off of the evildoer and you stand up to evil, you'll be very surprised about how your commitment to do good can defeat the evil. Okay, the kid who grew up in the Lower East Side, Rabbi Marvin Heyer, Moshe Heyer. Another person we can speak. You have a mini-series about Rabbi Heyer if you want. There's a new movie that some of us saw called Hollywood Rabbi. That wasn't made by the Wiesenthal Center, but I understand it'll be out on Netflix next month. We saw it at the Jewish Film Festival. He's a guy with some potential. So I thought I would share with you what we experienced in Warsaw in 1983, not 1883. In 1983, it was the 40th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was also our first trip to Auschwitz. And Rabbi Heyer led a group of 30 American Jewish leaders, some Canadians as well, North American leaders, on this trip. And I want to tell you 2 stories that happened almost back to back. We were supposed to meet with Cardinal Glemp. Remember that name? He was the cardinal in Poland. By the way, the other cardinal became Pope John Paul II. He was sitting already in Rome. And Cardinal Glemp was the guy who was always bailing out the Union leader, Lech Walesa, in Gdansk. So for the people who are older here, they get it. For the young people, just nod your head and make believe you know. So instead of seeing Lech Walesa in Old City, in Old Town, in Warsaw, the night, 40 years later, they gave us a different Catholic bishop, Bishop Dombrowski, who turns out that with 2 Dombrowskis, we got the anti-Semite. So, and he's talking, and we're sitting around this huge oak table, and at a certain point, he says the following. He goes into a tirade against communism and says, and by the way, I can understand as a result the anti-Semitism in this country against Jews, because they were the ones who brought us communism. So he was sitting here, Rabbi Heyer was sitting right next to him, and Rabbi Heyer, without hesitation, says, oh, and listening to you, I can understand why Nazi Germany selected Poland for the place of all of the death camps. So this great meeting, interfaith meeting, in such an important holy location, shall we say, devolved rather rapidly. The bishop pushed back, stood up, and said, you're impotent. This is disgusting. And just then, one of the survivors in our group, who Baruch Hashem was at the other end of the table, he got up, he took off his jacket, and he was going to take down the bishop. This was, I would say, the highlight of our interfaith evening in 1983. Okay, the next day, we went to Auschwitz. Everyone who's been there has their own, just beyond. And also, Poland was in the midst of a total control by the Soviet Union. It was a country really in black and white. Today you go to Warsaw, it's in living color. But black, drab, people were just totally, it was a very, very difficult time. So on our third and last morning, and just to give it a context, why would 30 Balabatim agree to go to Poland while the Soviet Union is controlling everything in the worst time of post-war, World War II Poland? The answer was, we were going from Poland to Rome, and we were going to meet the new Pope, Pope John Paul II, almost at the beginning of his papacy. So everyone was literally counting the hours. When are we getting out of here and going to Rome? So on Thursday morning, by the way, how many of you remember, forget the young people, remember growing up watching Lassie? And you know what kind of phone they had on the wall? Right? The piece of wood with the thing. That was already modern. They called Rabbi Heyer, we're somewhere in a school. They said, Rabbi Heyer, you have a call, it's Rome. So the two of us go out, and there, the box was half size, and you had to hook one piece there and speak into the box. And it was a bishop, a good friend of ours, and he said, Rabbi Heyer, you know, His Holiness knows your group has gone to Poland at this difficult time. He really deeply appreciates it. I'm just calling to confirm that your group will have a private audience with His Holiness. It'll be at 11 o'clock. And so please come at 10:15 Saturday morning to go through security, and you'll have a full hour with His Holiness. And without hesitation, Rabbi Heyer answers, how about Sunday at 11 o'clock? Rabbi, Sunday 11 o'clock, the Pope is going to be speaking to 100,000 people in St. Peter's Square. And Rabbi Heyer said to the bishop, who would go on to be a cardinal, great man, he said, you know better than anyone else how many months we have toiled and worked to get this meeting. But this does not involve life and death, and therefore I'm going to have to pass. We're not coming. And he hangs up the phone. So Rabbi Heyer, you have to call, what's it called, the Green Mile? He had to walk from across the room. In the next room were 30 people. Unfortunately, in that group, the only two Shomer Shabbos people were the two of us. He has to go into a room where people are counting down the minutes to get out of Poland to go see the Pope and explain to them, I canceled the meeting. Well, we came to Rome. Rome's a special place. We had good kosher meals. But you could tell, as we say in the old country, Eish Laharog. I mean, people were so bitterly disappointed in Rabbi Heyer. I was proud, but it was just the two of us. We had him surrounded. Sunday morning, we had a meeting at the convent of the Daughters of Zion. And there the bishop came, Bishop Mejia, and he explained interfaith relations, and then he took all the questions about what about the stuff in the Beit HaMikdash, when are you going to give it back, the usual blah, blah, blah. Then he says at the end, friends, just want to tell you something. I know how bitterly disappointed you are that the meeting did not take place. But I want you to know something else. When we heard Rabbi Heyer's response, we knew we were dealing with a leader who reflected the true values of Judaism and of the Jewish people. So I'm happy to tell you that you will have your private audience tomorrow, Monday, at 11 a.m. with the Pope. Here's the postscript of that story. And I won't say who it is, and I've changed some of the details because if you ever figure it out, you'll know why I didn't talk about it. You remember, for those of us, and you have 50 on 50 now, or 50 years, etc., we came a little late, 1977. But for a lot of years, if you ordered the New York Times, which used to be a newspaper, so if you stayed up late, Motzei Shabbos, because the Times actually was made in some place, right? You can open your door at 1:30 in the morning and actually sometimes read stories before the East Coast would wake up. So I opened the door, there's the New York Times. Months later, I opened this first section, because there are no comics, and there on A4, is this massive photo of the Pope meeting with a Jewish leader. So you have to do the math. If you're getting the newspaper Sunday and it comes by whatever transmission, so it could very well be that for the most part, the meetings, the suggested meeting times to meet with the Pope were Shabbos. And Rabbi Heyer was apparently the first or among the few who basically said, thank you, but no thank you. So for me, that pretty much encapsulates the tremendous backbone of a religious Jew who always did it with great respect, but also didn't leave any room for people to wonder where he stood on things, and that included his Yiddishkeit. Okay, number 4, the guru. I just told my friends a joke about a guru. If you want to hear it, I'll tell it afterwards. This is actually a real guru. It's my friend Sri Ravi Shankar, who heads up a small shtibel in India with about 15 million followers in India and around the world. I see Alan is already nodding his head because his father Zatzal spoke, I'll get to this at the very end of the story, spoke in India at an event. So my mentor and friend, Dr. Fred Ballitzer, called me up one day and said, I want you to meet, you have to meet Sri Ravi Shankar. Fred, who is he? He's a Hindu master. What am I going to go? No, you have to meet him. He's a good guy. One thing led to another, and I had the honor of hosting Sri Ravi Shankar in Eretz Yisrael for 4 days. Took him everywhere. He met Chief Rabbi Lau. It was like 11:30 at night. And by the way, he's treated as a god in India, and he's treated like a tourist in Israel. That's the way things work. But Chief Rabbi Lau said to him like this, amazing. He said, Hodi, Yehudi. Hodi, Yehudi. You see how close we are. And the only difference between us is a Hebrew letter. Which letter? The smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. I mean, Rabbi Lau could literally crack open, I would say, stone with his just amazing on-the-spot comments. And we had a wonderful trip. You were actually at the Kotel. Dr. Mark doesn't understand what role he played in helping to bring about a reconciliation between two countries that weren't close.
Out that night at the Kotel. They thought he was a makubal, and everybody was waiting for him.
That's correct. That's correct. So when he went to the Kotel, he sort of did like a modern Orthodox version of Hindu. He was smart enough not to come in the full lavush, but he wore one of these big yarmulkes, and thank God The first person who greeted him at the Kotel, you'll understand why in a minute, was Mark Goldenberg. And everyone else then came around and said, wow, this is terrific. Somebody wanted to know if he can get Shlishi at Shlomo Kalbach's shul. So his interaction at the Kotel was really beautiful. That night, he took me up on the offer to take him to the Toldos Aaron for the Tish. I'm not going to go into the details of that. He was fascinated in how Israel did so much with so little water, and he planted a tree in the Gush. Okay, so Monday night, Sal Teichman Zetzel, Fred Ballitzer, myself, we were going to open our Holocaust exhibit in New Delhi, not far from the ashes of the founder of modern India, an important location. And your father was, as always, amazing. And what happened was that we left early Sunday morning through Germany to go a day early and try to fix up whatever had to be taken care of. And that left Sri Ravi Shankar in Israel with one more day. Now, he went twice to the Old City, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He said to me later, it was amazing in the Old City. If I was walking, every Jew who saw me came over and wanted to know, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you here? And I enjoyed the interaction. He said, I went multiple times to the Old City and never had eye contact with a Palestinian. Interesting comment. So he was under a lot of pressure while he was there, because he was an international figure. You have to go, if you went to the holy places, the Jews, the Christians, you should go meet the Palestinians. And I told him when I was there, in a nice way, you want to spend time with the Palestinians, by all means, come back on your time, and you can go see anybody you want. We have a lot of things to do. But by Sunday morning, we were on a plane. So I get to Germany, and I call up the security guy in Yerushalayim and said, well, how's it going? How did it go? And he couldn't stop laughing. He finally controlled himself. I said, what happened? He said, oh, you weren't here. They convinced him to go up on Har HaBayit to the Palestinians. Okay, so what happened? He said, well, he saw by the Jews, you have a certain Friday night, the code, you look, you blend in, by the Christians, etc. And when he saw at Al-Aqsa that it came time to do the first of 5 or 7 hishtachavayas of bowing down, they went down and bowed, and so did he. There was only one problem. L'havdil, his tuchus was facing Mecca. So Sri Ravi Shankar had to run across that whole area, fleeing for his life. Okay? So Monday night comes, and here's the main reason I always tell this story, because he's a true friend for many decades. He comes to the program, having just arrived from Israel. He gets to the microphone, and he says, oh, we thought it was amazing, 4,000 people. By them, it's all right, not a great turnout. But he says, oh, I see here the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, you're my student, and he's dropping names. He said, I know exactly what you're all thinking. You see the name of this exhibit, and you're asking, why is Sri Ravi Shankar at this event? After all, I'm a Hindu master, and I teach you how to live in the moment. The name of this exhibition is Courage to Remember. It's a stira minei ubei, right? It doesn't fit. He says, I will tell you what I learned this week in Israel. In the world we live in today, in order to be able to live in the moment, you have to have courage to remember. A gewaltig word from a guru. Number 5. So we have a Hindu. Now I'm going to tell you about a person, a German, who headed up and still heads up a small church in a small town in Germany. His name is Pastor Jobst Bittner, and he's devoted much of his life to reconciliation after confronting the silence and unresolved legacy of Nazism within post-war Germany, including within his own family and within the Christian environment. He became convinced that genuine reconciliation requires truth, remembrance, and moral responsibility. He began working intentionally with the descendants of Nazi criminals, as well as the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors and Jewish communities. Through the March of Life movement, which he founded in 2007, he encouraged the grandchildren of Nazis to openly acknowledge historical guilt, reject anti-Semitism, and transform inherited silence into active solidarity with Jewish life and the State of Israel. Today, this movement organizes roughly 100 marches annually in more than 20 countries and mobilizes tens of thousands of Christians worldwide to act against anti-Semitism and support Israel. I had the honor of participating on the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in a march that went down the main street of Berlin to the Brandenburg Gate. It was a march of Jews, but mostly Christians. And I remember this march not only because of its historic significance, and we stopped at the place of the outdoor Shoah Memorial, etc., and I spoke later on at the Brandenburg Gate. But the most important message to me was twofold. Number one, there are people who get it. And number two, in order for us to be able to march through Berlin to get to the Brandenburg Gate, we were accompanied by 25 fully armed German soldiers and police. They were wearing flak jackets. That is also the reality today in Europe. But there, in a small hamlet in Germany, one person who figured it out has built an important monument. Finally, the kippah. So I had the honor of being appointed a commissioner on the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. Then Minority Speaker McConnell was the person who appointed me. I was the vice chair, but the second year, there are 9 commissioners. We all have to do things together. And the second year, I was the chairman. My last official act was to go to Saudi Arabia. And in this case, the Saudis insisted they were only interested in the top 2 people. We don't want 9 commissioners. We don't want 2 people. Your chair and your vice chair. I was the chair, an Orthodox Jew, and my vice chair. We were very close in so many ways. Gay, black, clergyman, great guy, and a Democratic operative. And the only thing that really brought us together is we both love America, and we both want to make sure that people can follow in the proper footsteps of whichever faith community they want to take. So it's the 2 of us, our executive director, and 2 researchers. I get there on Monday morning. I never thought in my life I would be in Saudi Arabia. And the first day meetings were outstanding. This was just also after MBS opened up Saudi Arabia for their women to be fully participant. And so at the main meeting we had was this genius woman who I think could be prime minister of any country. She had at her fingertips intelligent things to say about 15 or 20 different topics. That night, we were invited by the Foreign Ministry to go to the Riyadh equivalent of Ir Atikah. Since the old city of Riyadh had been destroyed when they lost a couple of hundred years ago, they recreated the old city. It's a UNESCO site. It's a great place, by the way. Take a date. And it's massive, so you get like in these golf carts, and they take you around. So about 30% of the way through, I went to the Sheretim, and when I came out, they said, something is weird here. They're telling us that there are a lot of people up there, we have to wait, but there's no one up there. And just then, a young man came to me. I remembered him from the airport, and he had a cell phone in his hand, and he held it like a bomb. He said, "Rabbi, you have a call." So, I have a call? Here? Okay. And it was from the Foreign Ministry. The person didn't identify themselves. He said, "Rabbi, welcome to Saudi Arabia. By the way, you can do anything you want in private. We couldn't care less. But Saudi Arabia also has laws and rules. So the law states that the only public display of religious symbols can only be those of Islam. And so we respectfully request that you remove your kippah." So I said, well, we're not talking about a political symbol. This is who I am. It's like asking a religious Muslim woman to take off her shara. But also you need to know that 53 years ago, I spent a month in the Soviet Union. I didn't take it off for them. I'm sure not taking it off for you. But are you absolutely sure that you're asking me to take off my kippah? Because I'm here as the chairman of a U.S. government commission whose lone job is to investigate religious freedom. Are you absolutely sure you want me to do this? And much to my surprise, he said, "You know what? Let me check." So he hangs up. Meanwhile, tell everybody, it's really shocking. And he calls back 5 minutes later. "I'm sorry, but you have to remove your kippah. If you don't remove your kippah, you'll have to leave the premises." They're the ones who invited me. "And if you don't leave the premises, you'll be removed." So I said, no, you don't have to worry. I'll be leaving, and I'll be leaving Saudi Arabia because I can't do my job here. Hang up. I tell my vice chair, I said, "Look, we worked very hard for this trip. You're welcome to stay. We have great meetings that are lined up. I'm leaving." He said, "Absolutely not. We're all out of here." And we left. And there's one thing that I learned, which I think will carry me further, because that's where I'll be spending a good deal of my efforts in the coming years. Our Arab and Muslim cousins need a lot of respect. They need a lot of kavod. You cannot give them enough kavod. It's like their oxygen. And it's a cultural thing. I know it's a problem, if they ever had to go to a shul and try to get an aliyah. But in their worldview, and by the way, it can't be forced or phony. They have a good nose for that. They need to be respected. And what I learned from that particular experience, which, by the way, the Saudi government apologized for, and they never apologize for anything, is that once in a while, it's not just a matter of overseas, it's in our daily lives too. Once in a while, it's good to remind our neighbors that respect is a two-way street. So, achrona, Chaviv Karen. So, you heard a little bit before, full disclosure, Karen Singer was the new kid in our 4th grade class at Yeshiva Flatbush. And initially it was a bit of an anomaly. By the way, I didn't know what that word meant when I was in the 4th grade. I couldn't even spell it in high school. but she was initially very shy and most relevant to a fourth grader. She didn't seem interested at all in ingratiating herself into any clique. But from the beginning, she exhibited a very disturbing trait. And I'm sorry, Robert, I have to, be honest. She could answer any question thrown her way by the teacher in class. Now, the good news is she was being asked and not people like me. But what was deeply troubling is that after worrying about every test before she took it, she seemed to ace every single one of them right through the 12th grade. Now, understand, I wasn't jealous. I was a bottom feeder in a class dominated by geniuses. But as a bottom figure, I relied what was known in the old country as the teacher's curve after taking a test to get a little bolster of a few points in my grade. But that teacher's curve basically disappeared because of geniuses like Karen. But also what emerged already in high school was she may have been a quiet person, but she was outspoken in a very direct way. When asked her opinion about issues and matters, and she shared her point of view, even if it didn't fit the prevailing or accepted trends. I still remember the day when Karen and Robert called and wanted to know if moving to LA was a good idea. I said, it's a great idea, especially for Robert, who's already a well-known, struggling writer. I said, yeah, you got to come out here. This is where the action's at. And as we know, the rest is history. Karen Avrech was a true leader in multiple ways. Of course, she raised a wonderful family. Secondly, like her colleague and friend and fellow Tehillim partner, my wife Roz, she served as a moral GPS for her husband, a talented and impactful screenwriter who, as a religious Jew, had to navigate the shark-infested waters of Hollywood. He did so successfully with quiet determination. And I also had the honor of watching from the sidelines how Karen applied not only her intellectual and academic skills, but her Jewish neshama to help guide youngsters at Hillel Hebrew Academy overcome the trials and tribulations of youth. All this while, she and Robert were battling with all their hearts and with all their souls in prayer and in deed to help Ariel thwart the Malach HaMavet. Roz led the Tehillim group, I think, for nearly 2 decades. Since COVID, it convenes on Zoom on Monday nights. As one of the anchors of those tefillot for all those years, Karen had a set number of chapters of the Psalms in which she chanted. And what the group did is, rather than just sort of take those chapters and put them back into, into the basket, is that those particular chapters were assigned individually and taken gladly by Karen's friends in order, and they're still known to this day as Karen's chapters in Tehillim. We miss these 2 precious souls. We're grateful that these 2 leaders continue to inspire us from heaven. May their memories and mitzvot continue to inspire Robert, his family, and community. Amen.
Perek Tes Zayin. Michtam LeDavid Shameni El Ki Chasisi Vach Amarto Ladonai Adonai Ata Tavasi Balecha L'Kdoshim Asher Baratzim Avadirei Kochev Sivam Yebu atzvosam acher maholu, balasich niskehem midam, uvalasosh mosam al spasoi. Adonai menos chalki v'chosi, ato tamir goroli. Chavalim naflu li banimim, af nachla shofra oloi. Avreches Adonai asher yotzani, af leilos yisiruni chuyosoi. Shivisi Adonai lenegdi sami, ki mimini balamot. Lochein samach libi vayogel kivodi, af bisori yishkon levetach. Ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishol, lo sitin chasidachol liros shochas, todieni ora chaim, sovas machoses bonecho, ne'imos b'mincho netzach. Kaddish.
Gadavi, Gadash, Merabah, Yamad Bracher, Teviam, Lechmalchate, Bechayachon, Viamachon, Chayedachol Beit Yisrael, Vagalav is my Caribbean Ru, Amen. Eish Merabam, Barach, Le'elam, Omei, Maya, Yit Barach, Vishtabach, Vit Bar, Vit Ramam, Vit Nasei, Vit Adav, Vit Alev, Vit Alash, Medikut Shabrichu, Elam, and Kober Chatav, Shiratatush, Chatav, and Nachamata, Damiran, Be'alma, Vimru, Amen. Ha Yisrael, Va'rabanan, Ve'al Tamadei, Tamadehon, Ve'al Kol Tamadei, Ve'al Kol Mandaskin, Ve'al Rata, Divatra, Adem Dichal Atar Vatar, Elohon Olchon Shlam Rabach in Avachista Brachamei, Chaye Rechem is an Everifich, for Kanmin Kadam Overhun Divishmai Vimru, Amen. Neshlam Rabin Shmai Vachayim Alena Balko Yisrael Vimru, Amen. Ose Shalom Ramav, Yase Shalom Alenu, Yako Yisrael Vimru, Amen. You are all invited to brunch. Beck. Thank you for attending.